Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Stars Fall from the Sky from the Raining Hearts series, Book 2 by K.G. Fletcher. And this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. A sudden burst of color against the inky sky sent a ripple of gasps throughout the unusually crowded beach. The annual 4th of July fireworks show off the Sandersville Beach Pier was a mainstay in the small community and started right after the sun finally dipped low enough below the horizon to call it a night. This was an event the entire county looked forward to, with families camping out most of the day on the sandy shore, frolicking in the Atlantic Ocean among the colorful beach chairs and plenty of American flags and umbrellas anchored into the landscape. Fiery flashes rippled through the night and burst in a dazzling display of burning colors, whizzing and zooming high above the ocean until they were nothing but hot sparks and smoke floating in the air. Ginger McCormick was wide-eyed at the spectacle and clung to Rusty's muscular bicep while he held their 3-month-old tenderly against his chest in an over-the-shoulder baby carrier. Their tiny daughter was sound asleep, nestled against her daddy with noise-reducing headphones over her ears. "Is she okay? Is the noise too much?" she fretted, standing tiptoe with bare feet on the sand to catch a glimpse of her daughter snuggled up against her 6'4" husband. "She's fine, baby. Relax and enjoy the show." He stretched his arm across her shoulders and pulled her close. Ginger sighed, hugged his waist, and tilted her head toward the sky, the shimmers of twinkling, spinning light reflecting in her brown eyes. Being a wife and a mother was everything she ever wanted. Rusty was the love of her life and a wonderful father to their little girl Daisy. Their friends often teased that they were the perfect couple. They fell in love when they were in high school in their small hometown of Dixie, Georgia, and had been inseparable ever since. They got married right after graduation and moved to their dream destination, the beach. Rusty was now a 13-year firefighter veteran and one of 6 full-time emergency response personnel at Station 4 in Sandersville Beach. Duly trained as a firefighter and paramedic, he was also part of the Ocean Rescue Team division. Not only was Rusty handsome, strong, and dedicated, he was a fantastic friend to everyone he met. The only glitch in their happily ever after was the agonizing years of infertility they went through. But they were on the other side of that, their precious baby girl living proof that persistence and faith had finally paid off. A shower of shimmering white sparkles lit up the sky as Ginger's friend Emmeline approached and curiously peered into the baby carrier strapped over Rusty's shoulders. "How's she doing, Mama?" Ginger's smile glowed. "She's sound asleep. Can you believe it?" Emmeline chuckled while shaking her head. "Sweet little Daisy is the world's best baby." She turned her attention to Rusty. "And how's Daddy doing? Need anything? Another beer?" "Of course he does." Thomas Cappy Capshaw chimed in, offering him an icy can pulled from the large cooler parked near their beach towels and chairs. His colorful board shorts were comical in comparison to the gray Metropolitan art tee that clung to his sturdy frame. "Thanks, man," Rusty replied, taking the open can and downing a hefty gulp, careful not to drip on the baby's head. Thomas and Emmy were dear friends and recently engaged. They grew up together during their childhood summers on the beach when Thomas, a native Atlantan, would hang out with his famous grandfather, renowned photographer Lawrence Capshaw. Emmeline Fisher was a Sandersville Beach local, and their mutual love for art drew them together as kids. When they reunited a few months before Daisy was born, it didn't take them long to realize they had always loved each other. Ginger was thrilled they were finally together and looked forward to their fall wedding. The artistic lovebirds had invited Ginger and Rusty to a front row seat for the 4th of July festivities, where they set up the camp in front of the beach cottage Thomas inherited from his grandfather. It was situated farther away from the crowd at the pier, but still had exceptional views of the fireworks spectacle. The two couples oohed and awed for several minutes until the small-town show ramped up, indicating the finale. Giant bursts of red, white, and blue colored lights exploded in an impressive shower of flames and reached higher and higher into the night sky, casting a reflective light onto the calm ocean water below. When the last of the hot sparks drifted to earth, Ginger could almost hear the sizzles of heat as they hit the salt water. Faint applause and whistles could be heard floating in the ocean breeze, and families started to pack up and head home after the long holiday. That was probably the best fireworks show ever, Emmy offered excitedly. I'm so glad you could come. Ginger picked up a damp towel, crumpled on the sand, and shook it out. I'm glad Rusty wasn't on duty tonight and could join us. Thanks for having us over. Emmeline had her hands on her hips as her long hair floated around her face. Don't start packing up yet, she whined. Let the guys finish their beers. Come on. She extended her hand and pulled Ginger toward the shoreline. Emmy, she giggled while looking over her shoulder at Rusty and Thomas, who were content to sit in worn beach chairs and talk all night. Her husband encouraged her with a wave as he palmed the baby carrier with his other hand. Have a little fun, Ginger. I'll let you know when baby girl starts waking up. Ginger nodded and tightened her grip on Emmy's hand as they traipsed toward the ocean. The moon was bright and cast shimmering orbs across the surface as they dipped their bare feet into the frothy water. Oh, it's so nice. Let's go for a swim. Emmeline pulled her V-neck t-shirt up and over her head, revealing her blue bikini top, and shimmied out of her frayed jean shorts, throwing them onto the warm sand. No, Emmy, I can't. I have to feed Daisy soon. Ginger clutched her pale pink cover-up at her chest, afraid that the cool water would cause the let-down reflex of her breast milk to start. I'll stay right here and wade while you take a dip. Okay, but you're missing out. The water is amazing. Emmy splashed in waist-deep before she dove headfirst into a small wave coming ashore. A few seconds later, she popped up and jerked her head back, throwing her wet hair behind her like a scene out of The Little Mermaid. Gah, this is awesome! Ginger couldn't help but laugh. Her friend Emmy was an up-and-coming local artist and lived her entire life in the tiny beach town. If mermaids were real, there was no doubt Em was related to them. They met at the Shack, which was a popular diner where they both worked, slinging breakfast platters for the tourists. It was an immediate connection, and they had been friends ever since. They were a yin and yang of sorts, and Emmeline's talent as a painter paired with Ginger's home economic skills made them the perfect female companions. Add to that their hunky men and a sweet dollop of Daisy, and they were both living the dream. Ginger touched her cheeks that stung with warmth from being in the sun all day. Licking her lips, the faint sweetness of the peach cobbler she had made for their holiday picnic lingered on her tongue as she shifted back and forth, digging her toes into the watery sand. Thanks to the humidity that seeped into the twilight, her dark blonde hair came out of her messy bun and fringed her face in ringlets. It had been a great holiday hanging out with good friends and indulging in way too much comfort food. They took turns holding little Daisy, and when she needed to be fed or changed, Ginger took her inside the cottage and relaxed on the sofa while looking out the large windows at the beautiful Sunshine Coast. Laughter echoed in the air as she turned to see her husband clink cans with Thomas in an impromptu toast. What they were toasting to, she had no idea, but it still made her smile. She was glad Rusty had a much-needed holiday off for once. The surge of tourists always made it hard for him to get away from his job, and he often worked overtime pulling double duty with the ocean rescue team. Most folks respected the red flag warnings when they appeared near the lifeguard stations, but there were always those few who got themselves into trouble and needed help. Rusty seemed to always be on call during the summer season. It was only July 4th, and she was more than ready for all the tourists to go back home so she could have more quality time with him. The ocean water surged over her bare feet, and the lapping sounds lulled her into a relaxed state. She walked several yards north toward the lit-up pier, taking her time and enjoying the end of the long day. Emmeline bobbed up and down in the dark water parallel to the shore before she hoisted herself up and trudged toward her, dripping from head to toe. That felt so good, Emmy sighed, breathless from her swim. I hate it that I have to work the early shift tomorrow at the diner. Otherwise, we'd be out here all night. I feel for you, Ginger replied. Kudos to her friend for not giving up her part-time job when she moved in with Thomas. They were rebuilding his grandfather's art gallery that had burned to the ground several months ago. Once the gallery construction finished, Emmeline said she'd plan her diner exit strategy so she could go full-time into the art world. Ginger was lucky. Since the day little Daisy was born, she was a full-time mama and never looked back. Emmeline's squeal cut through the air as a shirtless Thomas came out of nowhere, grabbed her by the waist, and hoisted her over his shoulder. Cabby! She squealed with delight. Ginger laughed as she watched him carry her back into the ocean, the roar of the surf echoing in her ears. Thomas lowered Emmy into the water and grabbed her by the face, kissing her long and hard. Biting her lower lip, Ginger glanced back at her husband and baby, who seemed to glow under the moonlit sky. Rusty was blissfully staring out at the water while he gently rubbed the infant carrier strapped to his body. A surge of love pulsed through her veins as she breathed deeply through her nose. Looking up into the velvety black night at the twinkling stars that seemed to wink back at her, Ginger offered a small prayer of thanks. This was how she always imagined her life would be. This was her happy place, under a sky full of stars with her family and friends by the ocean. Startled by a streak of white against the blackness, she couldn't help the small gasp that escaped her lips. At first, she thought it was a rogue bottle rocket or firework going off. But then she realized it was a falling star. On impulse, she tightly shut her eyes and made a wish, the young girl in her breathless with wonder and hope. She could almost hear her mama's southern twang. If wishes were horses, beggars would ride. The Scottish proverb was quoted often in her household when she was growing up. As a whiny child or pubescent teen wishing she could have this or do that, she never truly understood what her mama meant when she quoted the phrase. As an adult, it finally made sense. If wishing could make things happen, then even the most destitute people would have everything they ever wanted. She most certainly was not destitute, but everything she ever wanted or wished for was finally hers. Chapter 2. A low rumble of thunder woke Ginger up out of deep sleep. Groggily, she stretched her neck to peer at the baby monitor perched on the nightstand and sighed with relief, seeing Daisy on the small screen fast asleep in her crib. Her daughter was off schedule from the last night out on the beach and had trouble settling down for the night once they got home. Ginger had a difficult time falling asleep as well, chalking it up to the overindulgence of holiday food and beers she consumed with her friends. Laying back against her pillow, she sighed and closed her eyes to block out the dull morning light seeping into the small master bedroom through a crack in the blinds. When she felt Rusty's warm hand slide over her hip and he pulled her taut but against his hard body, she couldn't help but smile. She mumbled, relaxing into his arms. Good morning, he whispered into her ear. Morning, she replied, her voice humming with a lazy lilt. Rusty's warmth seeped into her pores through her silky nightgown as they lay in each other's arms. The steady sound of rain falling on the metal roof of their humble abode added to the blissful moment. Ginger felt him slowly rub her lower back and moaned with pleasure. He knew all her sore spots since becoming a mommy and always managed to take care of them. His attentiveness to her since high school, something she never tired of. Does that feel good, baby? Yes, don't stop. I'll never stop. His hand slid over her panties and he rubbed her bare bottom. Ginger blinked awake, the sudden tingling in her lower region gaining her attention. They had only made love a few times since Daisy was born, not because they didn't want to, but because of how tired they had been transitioning into their new roles as parents. Now that their daughter was on a partial schedule, things were starting to feel normal again. Are you awake? Ginger giggled again as she felt the hard length of his morning composition against the back of her thigh. I am. His low voice rumbled through her like the dissipating thunder. Snaking his hand around her leg, he rolled her panties to the side and stroked her soft mound. You feel so good. Ginger's eyes rolled back as she concentrated on the pleasure his fingers were dialing up, his touch sending bolts of the electricity to the apex of her thighs. She turned and shimmied her body to face him, and the sight of his handsome face made her breath catch. After all these years, Rusty McCormick's good looks still made her heart pitter-patter like the lovesick teenage girl she was when they fell in love in high school. His hazel eyes crinkled into a smile as he leaned in and kissed her.